expressing boundless potential. You know, in some respects, it doesn't matter how much potential we have if we don't express it. So many of us know we have potential, but we're so afraid of failing. We're so afraid of looking stupid or looking silly or putting our dreams out there and not making it and then having other people hold us accountable for that, that we're sitting in our potential. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. So we're here talking about expressing it. To express it means to get it outside of you and to let it out and to share it. Now here's the interesting thing. So many times when we are afraid to let something out, it's because we're afraid of how other people are going to judge it. But you can't enjoy your own gift till you let it out. Listen to what I'm saying. You can't enjoy your own gift till you let it out. If there's a singer in you, you're not gifted by the music in you till you sing. I don't care if you're just in the bathroom. If you're a painter, you got to paint. If you're a writer, you got to paint. If you love, you got to love. Like whatever that is, you're going to be blessed by it. And for fear of other people's criticism and judgment, we don't allow ourselves to be blessed by our own gifts. Don't make it about anybody else. It's like, make it about you. Your gifts are for you. Your potential is for you. And this idea of expressing boundless potential. We are tapped into an inexhaustible supply. Just imagine that for a moment. We are tapped into a reservoir of inexhaustible supply, so that our capacity to express our potential has no end. It has no limit. For whatever reason, I'm getting a picture in my head now as I'm speaking of Christopher Reeves, the actor, who was one of the stars in one of the versions of Superman. You know, big guy, big stature. And he becomes a quadriplegic. Do you remember that? And there he is, developing new talents because of his potential and his connecting to being an actor, and he starts being a director. And I remember those visions of him kind of laying and I think he had to use something in his mouth to be able to communicate, and I think he could barely speak or whatnot, but he still had the potential within him. There was an American Express commercial, and it had this guy who was carving these very intricate, ornate things on cabinets. And he was blind. He had lost. He used to see. But he was just so beautiful. And I loved what he said. He said, I lost my sight, but not my vision. I lost my sight, but not my vision. It's a very, very short prayer in Scripture, and it's sometimes known as the prayer of Jabez. We sing a song about it. And the main emphasis of this is enlarge my territory. This is not the imperialistic, colonialistic enlarge, which I am going to talk about in a moment. This is our own place and space as an expression of the divine. Enlarge my territory. In order for us to express our potential, we have to grow. And we think of growth sometimes in a linear way, as though I have to mature or I have to be something else, as forward motion. Think of growth also as inner expansion. We have to enlarge our capacity to express our potential. We have to increase our capacity to express it. It would be like trying to do a rock concert using the extension cords that you use in your house. Or running a generator through the electricity in your house. It's just not enough juice. There's just not enough wiring. There's not enough conduit in order for that much power to come through. Well, it's like that in our lives. We've been these little bitty extension cords, and that can get, whatever, get 120 watts through, but Spirit is trying to get 2,000 watts through us. Not when you grow into being somebody else, not when something new happens, but right where you are. Right where you are. I know how it feels for me. There's a difference for me between a heartbreak and a heartache. Now, when I am experiencing heartbreak, I'm very sad. I'm very hurt. I'm grieving. I'm feeling betrayed or lost or confused or like whatever that is, But there are those moments when Spirit is calling me up to love more. And I've never given childbirth, but I imagine it's like that feeling of when your body is just being stretched beyond anything that bodies should be stretched to. Well, it'll feel that way in my heart, where I am literally rubbing my heart. And sometimes I'm gasping like, oh, this place of forgiveness is just, really, God, I got to love more, like harder. I don't want to, okay, whoo. The break feels like this. The heartache feels like this. The break feels like it's a contracting energy. The heartache is this expansive energy. You feel what I'm saying? It's like that with our potential. When we're expressing our potential, there is there's an ache, because it's sometimes like I feel like being stretched more than I can be stretched. Well, you know what? So in the inner, so in the outer, so in the macro, so in the micro. There are not different sets of laws or principles for the collective than there are for the personal. It's the same thing. There is no big or small in the universe. All of that's relative according to us. It's like big compared to what? Tall compared to what? If you're a male in 4 feet, you might be considered short. If you're an adult. If you're 3, you'd be tall. All of it's relative. Rich, poor, young, old, big, small. It doesn't have any intrinsic value because it's all cross comparison to something else. So the universe doesn't care. Music doesn't care whether it's a symphony with a whole orchestra or a harmonica. It's not going to stop being the music that it is. There's not a separate gravity for a tennis ball than there is for a rocket ship. You drop it, it's going to fall. Period. End of report. As long as you're within this atmosphere. Because there's just a gravitational pull, period. So it is with our lives. We have an endless, boundless potential as a society. And we are being stretched right now. We are experiencing a heartache. Some of us are just experiencing a heartbreak. But Spirit is calling us up to the place of the heartache. where we expand a little bit more. Breathe. Breathe. Okay. You're going to have to keep breathing through this sermon. I'm warning you. You're going to have to keep breathing through this sermon. We as a society have an endless, boundless potential. And let me tell you what's happening in America. It is unprecedented. This has never happened in human history before. Where there is a superpower that is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-racial, multi-religious configuration. Listen to what I'm saying. We've never had a pluralistic superpower before. The Japanese are Japanese. The French are French. The Chinese are Chinese. The Germans are German. Okay. That's not to say that there aren't other people within there, but in terms of the society, in terms of the power, in terms of the configuration of the individuals, it's pretty monolithic in comparison. Are you with me? America, the United States of America, is in a different position. We don't have a precedent for this. We do not have a precedent for this. And it is our charge in creativity right now to figure it out. We have a charge to create something new. We have a charge to create something different. This was not the nation that the quote-unquote founding fathers thought of. This is not the nation that the founding fathers presented or had any intention of creating. It's not. In my advanced spiritual oneness training that we're doing now, that's a drop-in on Mondays and Wednesdays, for the past couple of sessions, we've actually been going over one of the most infamous court cases in the United States called the Dred Scott decision. Woo, that's a deep case. In a 7-2 opinion, I don't even know of any other court opinions that have been 7-2, where 7 of the 9 judges have said this is the way that it is. And I won't go all into it, but I'm bringing it up to say that they overwhelmingly, unanimously said in this court case, breathe, that no one of African descent was ever intended to be a citizen of the United States, free or not, that the founding fathers had created the United States for white people exclusively, that all the privileges that were meant there, that's what it was supposed to be for. And it went on and on. And they were basing this opinion based upon the history of the nation. In all of the rules and everything that had happened through all the states is a 1,400-page, because every judge put in their opinion. Okay. We have an opportunity to create something new. We have an opportunity to create something new. We have an opportunity to create something new, but we have to have the desire and we have to have the intent to create something new. Take a breath. I was very proudly raised, fundamentalist, evangelical, charismatic, Pentecostal Christian. Those are my roots. I stand in those roots. I don't necessarily agree theologically with all of that, but those are my roots. Okay? I'm obviously now a New Thought metaphysical minister. I've blossomed out of that. But where we're going now as a society and what we have to create is deeply, profoundly impacted on religious views. You can separate church and state in that you don't have to have the same institutions for both. But you can never, ever, ever separate politics from spirituality. You cannot. Because every politic is based upon a worldview. Every politic is based upon the notion of what is right, what is just, what is fair, what is the natural order of things, who are people in relationship to one another, what is supposed to be power, what are the fundamental building blocks, what is our potential as a people. These are spiritual questions, which is why all of our documents and the Declaration of Independence start off as spiritual manifestos, talking about endowed by our Creator and the rights under nature. These are spiritual propositions. Are you with me? Our spirituality is based upon spiritual propositions. Okay? There is a book that I encourage all of you to get, because I feel like it helps us make sense out of this moment, where we are in 2016, what we're facing in our national elections, and where we have to go from here. I am going to read from the cover, Jack. It is published by a friend of mine, I should say colleague. We aren't like personal friends, but we know each other and we've worked together. His name is Robert Jones. He is the CEO of the Public Religion Research Institute. Fabulous man. He's a minister from the South and one of the best researchers in the nation. He's always in the big headlines and the big news, and he is just really, really good, really sensitive, white, okay? I need to say that because of what I'm about to say now. His newest book, take a breath, because it's going to sound harsh, but I'm going to read the inside cover to show what it's talking about. It's called The End of White Christian America. Take a breath. The End of White Christian America. And he is not saying, as you'll see here, that there's anything wrong with being a white Christian American. Just that population is no longer the majority. Okay? So not in the end, like there's a death and it's irrelevant or not important or less important, but simply numerically no longer in the majority position. Front cover. First part. America is no longer a majority white Christian nation. The End of White Christian America, Robert P. Jones explains how this seismic change, I like that word, seismic, it's an earthquake. This seismic change has profoundly altered the politics and social values of the United States. So here he writes, here's this little preface here in his the cover jack. He says, for most of the country's history, white Christian America, the cultural and political edifice built primarily by white Protestant Christians, set the tone for our national policy and shaped American ideals. But in recent decades, new immigration patterns, changing birth rates, and religious disaffiliation have transformed the United States. The year 1993, think about that, 23 years ago. The year 1993 was the last in which white Protestants constituted a majority of the population. Today, even with Catholics, or even when Catholics are included, white Christians make up less than half of the country. Breathe that in for a moment. White Christians now make up less than half of the nation. Drawing on findings from one of the largest troves of survey data on contemporary politics and religion, Robert Jones shows how today's most heated controversies, the strident rise of the white, quote-unquote, politics of nostalgia following the election of the nation's first black president, the apocalyptic tone of arguments over same-sex marriage and religious liberty, and stark disagreements between white and black Americans over the fairness of the justice system can be fully understood only in the context of the anxieties that white Christians feel as the racial, religious, and cultural landscape has changed around them. Today, although they still retain considerable power in the South and in the Republican Party, white Christians lack the former political and social clout. Looking ahead, Jones forecasts the ways that white Christians might adjust to their new reality and the consequences for the country if they don't. Breathe. Now, and I keep saying this, is a time for compassion. Now is a time for coming together. If you think of it like a family, a growing family, right? You know, when you're the firstborn and you have all the attention, and then there's a second kid, and then there's a third kid, or maybe a fourth kid, you might feel a little bit displaced. Okay, so I was the baby. I don't have that experience. But are there any people in the room who can relate to what I'm saying? Okay. You're no less a part of the family, right? But there's shifting and there's adjusting that needs to be made. And it can sure feel like you're being pushed out. Now, I don't know what possessed my father to do this, but my brother is 4 years older than I. And when I was born, my father got rid of my brother's dog. You're shaking your heads. Yes. Yes. It took the next 50 years for us to heal that. I am not joking. I am really serious. It was probably only 10 years ago that he and I stopped being at each other in some kind of way and started to pull together to care for our aging parents. Okay? The dog was a boxer, I don't know. Who knows what my dad was thinking in 56. But all I know, if you can catch where I'm going here, all I know is that sense of loss that he felt, like some privilege or entitlement or something that was important to him, was taken away to make room for this new baby sister, let's just say didn't start us off on a good foot. The landscape is changing. The landscape is changing. And we need to get over the discussions about who's taking over. Because it gives the impression, and I don't mean just taking over in any one thing, who's taking over social values, who's taking over political seats, who's taking over the education, all these different, like taking over jobs, taking over. It gives the impression that there's something that should be, and somehow or another, somebody or something has come in and disturbed the natural order of things of how it should be. Which is very different than adjusting to a new reality. It's not who's taking over, it's how do we move over. That's a different question. Not who's taking over, but how do we share? We have to start to learn how to share. And I'm not just talking about white Christian America, I am talking about America. People who live in the United States of America. If you were to listen to our rhetoric now about how we're the best and, in America, and, we're going to rule and we're the greatest and we're the most powerful. Newsflash. Newsflash. Out of every 100 people on the planet, 95 of them are not American. Out of every 100, 95 are not American. We got to learn how to play nice. We have to learn how to play nice. This way of wanting our values, our way, everything that represents us or that is for us to be what dominates. No, that is not the world that God created. It's just not. We have to learn how to be global citizens. We have to learn how to find a way so that every religion is able to be represented and it be okay. I'm from Los Angeles. There are more religions practiced in Los Angeles than any other city on the planet. Any other city on the planet. And newsflash, this is not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing. For all the drama that we're doing right now about Islam and Judaism and Christianity, these three religions have an undue influence and impact on the world right now. But you know what? They're all from the same root. They're all from the same root. This is crazy. This is crazy making. And for those of you who aren't aware, cliff notes of that root, Abraham. He was Abram, name changed Abraham. Abraham had been promised by God, this is the story, that his seed would be a great nation. Now, mind you, his wife, Sarah, maybe she was Sarai, and then she became Sarah, was elderly and they were childless. Okay. He was promised that his seed would become a great nation and that there was this land that he could go to of milk and honey, the promised land. Well, he goes to the promised land and it's empty, right? And he's feeling pretty ripped off. And he goes into Egypt, where there's lots of good things that are going on. That's how the Hebrews first got into Egypt for their captivity. He goes into there. Well, he's waiting for this great nation to arise. His wife is elderly, supposedly barren. I don't know the relationship or what was there, but all we know of is that her handmaiden, a black woman, Hagar, gave birth to his son, Ishmael. Years later, his wife Sarah does have a child, Isaac. And the story has it, Hagar and Ishmael are banished. Hagar and Ishmael go on to be the roots of what we know of as Islam. Sarah and Isaac grow up to be the roots of what we know of as Judaism. And we are still fighting today over the rights of the firstborn. Who really is the heir? Jesus was a Jew. So Jesus then comes out of that lineage that comes out of the Judaism. But Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are all from family. All from the same roots. I want you to breathe that in for a moment. We have to find a way to work this out. My contention in this message is that that's never been our intent. My message today is that there has never been the intent. Even all of the major religions that we know of in the world were made for them, for their people, their history, their culture. This is part of the reason Jesus was killed, was over this, was over his audacity to have a different vision, over his audacity to have a vision of a pluralistic society. He did the unthinkable, where he took the Hebrew doctrines, which were only supposed to be shared in the temple, only to Hebrew males, and then not only Hebrew males. You had to qualify. You couldn't be sick, and there were all these different things. It is estimated that maybe a third of all Hebrew males actually qualified to go inside the temple. That's how exclusive it was. And he takes these documents, and he starts sharing them with everybody indiscriminately. With the Romans, with the Greeks, with the Samaritans, with the Ethiopians, on and on and on. Can you listen to what I'm saying? This vision of a world where we can share our wealth, we can share our spiritual knowledge. He never, ever, 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 ever asked anybody to convert. Never. Like, well, if they won't let you in the temple, we'll do it out here. Never ask anybody to convert. Listen to what I'm saying. Endless, boundless potential. Part of the reason why America has risen up the way that it has. And we keep hearing about it over and over and over again in the political speeches, is this immigration or forced migration. But it is this mixture, this diversity. We know from genetics that if you don't mix the gene pool up a little bit, it's not as strong. So we're a bit of a mutt nation. But there's strength in that. Are you with me? What can we make of that potential? What if we stopped with the othering? What if we stopped with the othering? This nation has always been built on the backs of labor that wasn't fully recognized. Always. We don't need to demonize undocumented workers. They are not all rapists and terrorists and all. They are contributing members of the society. Been here for years, been here for generations, contributing to the economy, buying products, who have families and whatnot, like just like anybody and everybody else. The things that I am saying here now, I hope you feel what I'm saying. It's not even about politics. It's about society. It is about life. It is about respect. It is about how do we live together as a people. And if we are truly a democracy, we should be willing to figure this out. But it may mean a world where no one particular culture dominates. It may mean that. I think there's a reason why the United Nations got started on our soil in New York as a model of what it can be to have nations come together and talk together and make agreements and try to work things out. Do we have a vision of that? Can you see how it would be a whole other discussion if we stop talking about who's taking over what, but to say, how do we make the best of what we got? How do we pull together with what's here? How do we make room for everybody? How do we do this? There is genius here. There is potential here. When Barack Obama was born, his parents' marriage wouldn't have even been legal in every state. Look at the Olympics now. Look at the people who are winning gold for the United States. How they wouldn't have even been allowed to play the game not too long ago. Isn't it something? I remember Jesse Jackson saying, we will never know just how good the game can be till everybody can play. Till everybody can play. And can we have compassion? This is a seismic shift. And when you don't know what it's like to be in the minority, it's an adjustment. It's an adjustment. And I want to call on people to start having those discussions. I mean it, really. I remember when it just, like a bolt of lightning, I was at my cousin's graduation last year at San Jose State. He had gotten his bachelor's, and this was his master's that he was getting. And we're out in the big field, and out in the big stadium. They had 10,000 graduates that year. They had a thick program book with everybody's name in it. And I am not exaggerating. Like maybe 80% of the names I could not pronounce. And in the bleachers, looking like who was around me, I could not pronounce. And it was clear that most of these names were from Eastern countries, Middle Eastern countries. And it dawned on me. And I just looked and I thought, this is California. And I looked at all these people graduating. And I just said to myself, it's over. Whatever that was that we had before is over. It's a new day. It's a brand new day. And I'm feeling for you. Because for like a little blip African Americans, like, got to be, like, the minority, and folks were trying to, you know, help the economic run. Oh, that day is so gone. You know, now it's just down to just trying not to be killed in the street. But about our schools and there's no talk about that. Like, that's over. That's over. And I'm not saying it bitterly. What I'm saying is that I feel. I got compassion. I know what this is like with these seismic changes. But I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. I think there is potential. Because when we all come together, there is something incredible that can happen. And I want to leave you with this little image and this little story. Because I think that's part of the reason why Inner Light is here. We're here to help create a container to sort of figure it out. There's everybody up in here. There's everybody. There are Republicans and Democrats and Greenpeace. There are people voting for Trump. I know it. I'm serious. And it's okay. I'm not saying it. There's everything. There are vegans. There are carnivores. There are club hoppers. There are 12-steppers. We are making up genders. There is every conceivable family configuration. You name it. We've got millionaires sitting next to folks who are homeless, and you wouldn't know the difference because we are all here in community trying to figure it out. Trying to figure it out. And I want to leave you with this one little image, because to me it's so profound. It's a story in the Bible between Jesus and one of his disciples. And all the disciples represent faculties of the mind. And this is a conversation that's happening with Simon. Simon is a brother of Andrew. Simon represents faith. Andrew represents strength. Faith and strength are brothers. Now we have this idea in our mind of the Apostle Peter, St. Peter at the pearly gates, this big, figure, bright, wise. No. Simon later became Peter. And this is the moment when he becomes Peter. Simon was the original simple Simon. Simon was very, very slow. He was so slow that his nickname was Stone. That's how slow he was. His nickname was Kepha. And when Jesus first meets him, he teases him about this. He says, I know who you are. They call you Kepha. So in Jesus' last days, when he knows I'm leaving and y'all got it, he's trying to figure out what is he working with here. What am I working with? So he's posing this question. He says, who do you think I am? Who do you think I am? And people are giving him all kinds. His disciples are giving him all kinds of answers. Some think you're Elijah returned. Some think you're this or that. And little Simon, simple Simon, says to him, I think you're the Christ. Now, this Christ is not a single person. It's a designation that means somebody who understands their connectedness with the divine. That's what that means. He says, I think you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. This Son in Greek is huios, which means likeness and character. It is not like a direct lineage. It means to be in likeness and character. It can also be plural. Like in the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers, they shall be called the children of God, because they have the likeness and the character of God. So Simon says to him, I think you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus looks at him and goes, this is amazing. He says, you couldn't have learned this through books. You couldn't have been taught this. He says, they call you a stone, but you're a rock. Peter, petroleum. You're a rock. Now, the word church, in Greek, the root word is ecclesia. We think of ecclesia in a very institutional way. But it doesn't mean that. It literally means the spiritual community. It really just means the convening and the congregation of the people. Not a church, not an institution. That's not what the word means. So Jesus looks at him and says, nobody could have taught you this. They call you a stone, but you're really a rock. And it is upon this simple Simon's consciousness, it is upon this ability to see God as humanity walking in and among us, it is upon this consciousness that I will build my church. Upon this consciousness, I will build my spiritual community. And it is upon this consciousness that we build this spiritual community. Not to dominate, not to be over the landscape, not to have our values overshine anybody else's values, but to come together as one planet, one people, one planet, one people. We have the potential to do that if we will just get off of the story about we're the best and we're the greatest, whether it's about our race, our nationality, our religion, or anything else. If we are just willing to be good global citizens, there is no limit with the genius that is on this continent of what we can do and what we can accomplish. That is the creativity. That's the creativity. Our boundless potential.